Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, and I am joined by Aram in Toronto. What up, Aram?
Not much. Hey, happy end of the regular season.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm really happy that the regular season is over. It's been a really strange up and down, a lot of down Warriors
really up and
season
down. Yeah.
season. Considering they are the third seed, considering how they started, it's been a rough middle to end of the season. How you feeling?
I'm feeling super excited for the playoffs, and we're recording this during the last Pelicans game. So, I mean, this is something that I'm usually doing in when I watch baseball. It's like, how are the standings and all that kind of thing. And so it's been kind of interesting to see how the seeding is going to play out because, matchups matter, and we've experienced there's a path to the championship in the playoffs. But overall, super excited for this next season, right? This playoff season, and it's been a long year, and I'm sure you feel that more than I do because you've been doing post games for every game. But so I was thinking, to recognize the end of the season, to do like a kind of a season recap, because I think when you get to the playoffs, whenever their run ends this playoff season, hopefully as late as possible with the championship, but whatever happens there is going to color how we view this season. But I think it's important after such a long and dramatic season to actually take a moment and kind of appreciate or complain about some of it too. So yeah. Let's get to that. I think I remember one of the episodes you did in the beginning before the season. It was a solo episode, and you did like 10 epic picks. So you wanna what were some of your best ones? And you probably had some worse ones, right?
No, I'm always right. No, yeah. So it was an episode where I was just looking at this coming season, and it just seemed like there was a lot of intrigue, a lot of good storylines,
and
for the first time. Yeah. And some I was way off on, some I was, pretty on, to just get on the one that I was way off on was that the Warriors and Lakers would both be contenders for the first time in my Warriors fandom. And obviously the Lakers didn't live up to their end of the bargain, but it was all set up, right? I didn't think the Lakers, I thought the Westbrook trade was awful when it happened, but when they picked up Malik Monk, and some younger dudes around the fringes, I was like, okay, they might be able to at least be top 4 or something, top 5. And it never happened. So, our whole lives, it was like the Warriors were bad, but the Lakers were good. But then when the Warriors hit their dynasty, the Lakers were terrible, right? So I was actually looking forward to that. I thought the NBA would be looking forward to that because we've never had a NorCal, SoCal NBA rivalry. I mean, I'm not counting Sacramento. I guess I shouldn't say NorCal. I should just say Warriors-Lakers rivalry. And I guess we kind of had a Warriors-Clippers one for a hot minute. Yeah. But and then with Steph and LeBron and all the history, I thought it was going to be really interesting. And then the first game of the season was awesome. And I thought that was just going to be how it was going to be this year, but clearly it was not.
Well, it's kind of like how we've said before, if you have Steph and Draymond and, this year Klay, you always have a chance in the playoffs, right? And the Warriors Lakers was setting up to be kind of like one of those maybe the older heavyweight fight. It's like Tyson and Holyfield. They're both, on the back end, but it's still going to be good. You still want to watch it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the rationale was that hey, they had LeBron, they had AD, and fill out the roster around that. But whatever, I'm not too disappointed about that because well, I'll ask you for we could come back to that later
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
have some thoughts about that. But so that was your misfire, your top
yeah.
misfire.
Yeah. My best one, and it wasn't like, to me it was pretty obvious. I'm sure to you too that it was going to be the greatest rookie class in years, and I've been saying that for a while. But like, far be it for me to take credit for that because people have been touting
Yeah.
this class for like a few years when these kids were like in high school, maybe some of them even middle school or something. But and it's proven to be true, right? John Hollinger wrote that article in the Athletic about this being like one of the best rookie classes, and I mean it was pretty obvious once it started, and just to see how deep it is, uh, I find that super interesting. I mean, I just love watching rookies to see how they translate to the NBA, especially when you have two of them on your own team. And obviously, it's been exciting to watch Kuminga and to some extent Moses Moody, who hasn't gotten as much run, but just seeing like how Cade Cunningham came on stronger late. Mobley's been good all the way back into, I just got to tout my Brandon Boston pick idea, which a lot of people kind of laughed at. I think you just like laughed at the fact that like it's not. It was either you or somebody on like a website said like it's not like the NFL. You can't just trade back and collect picks. But I mean, in theory, you could. But I know the NBA doesn't really work like that way that fast with their assets and everything, unless you're Sam Presti. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm super interested. I mean, I love this class, and it was actually going to come up a little bit later for me because it is different than the NFL in that the NFL's draft is such a big thing because these players make impact immediately, and usually, that's not the case for NBA players. I remember kind of back in the day, it would be like, oh, by year 3, you kind of know what you have. If you think about year 3, it's like that's already for players that are coming up now. Year 3 players are getting into the MVP conversation. You got John Morant, and or last year you had Trae and Luka. Like they were 3rd-year players last year, I think, and so just the way that young players are contributing and adapting to the league. I mean, one of the things, I was thinking about, some things that I liked about this year and some things that I didn't. Some things that I liked was that everybody was a little skeptical about the 2 timelines, right? The young players being able to develop while being contenders. And it's like,
except for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was so hyped, right? And
I wasn't skeptical at all. I was like, this could totally happen. Like, I mean, I've been a believer since the beginning. So,
anyway. but I didn't think it would come along to the point where you watch that San Antonio game last night, and you're just like, whoa, Kuminga needs to play in the playoffs. Like, who cares if he makes some mistakes? He needs to play. Like, he helped them. Like, he ignited them in that game, right? So I wouldn't have expected he would be close to a playoff rotation. I mean, it seems like Steve definitely wants to do his best to temper all those expectations and push him away, and I don't know why he does that, and I'm sure Kuminga makes mistakes, but man, some of those mistakes you can live with when he can do what he does. And so anyway, I that's been one of the things I've really, really enjoyed seeing is seeing these young guys and this plan work out to a degree, to the degree that it has, and just all the pieces that they assembled. Something I don't know that I didn't like what happened this year, but I guess I was surprised by is just how hard it is for somebody to come back, and obviously Klay, right? We've been thinking about it for 941 days. And that like he would come back and be Kyle Korver, and I think I mentioned this a little bit, and I don't know if I was like clear enough in a previous episode that like, we talked about oh, what percentage of his former self would you accept? And I think, we said for about this year, like, oh, 70 to 80. And it's like, oh, but he doesn't cruise along 70 to
Right.
80%. He's just like going down to 30 and getting up to 90 and like back down to 30. I mean, he's been
Yeah.
good in the last few weeks. And I think that illness that he had, that non-COVID illness, air quotes,
Mhm.
not implying that he had COVID. I believe that he had an illness, but that seemed to really wreck him and his rhythm. And
Mhm.
it took him some time to get back. But I think what has surprised me more than anything, too, is that the physical, adjustment, he's older, 2 years off, but it's like the mental adjustment. He
Yeah.
has not been sharp mentally in some situations, something like the Phoenix game. There was that late foul he had. It was a mistake, but it's just like you don't remember pre-injury Klay making that mistake, but it makes sense, like who after if you went back to your job after 2.5 years, like you probably would take some time to adjust to it, like mentally, right? So, but that was
Yeah.
a surprise, like to see that really playing out. I guess I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah, actually talked about this in yesterday's episode, the most recent one. It's something that I've noticed, right? Like when Clay came back, it took him a while to ramp up, right? He hadn't played in 941 days, and then he started looking better. And then the illness came around. He was inconsistent, but the illness came, it knocked him off mentally, knocked him off of his path physically, just getting back on the court. And so it took a while to get that back. And so he was even more up and down, and then he was pressing all this stuff. Like there's a lot of obviously like psychological stuff going on there, I'm sure. So he's been better the last couple of weeks, and especially the past week. But it also helped. He sat out the Kings game, right? And then they had 3 days off. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd always said that like it seems to be happening so fast up in his mind that like it's a lot to process, and that's why I think he'll be better next year than he is
Totally.
now, because from now until hopefully October, he's physically going to be actually in better shape. He's not going to age 500 years. So I just feel like he'll have a better season next year. And I think like easing into the playoffs like he has been, hopefully he plays well against the Pelicans. We'll see. Hopefully only plays like 20 minutes too.
I know.
Get him out of there.
Strictly, come on, don't get hurt.
Hit 2 shots and retire for the night. But there is a part of me, like when you do take a step back, you're like, oh, this makes sense, right? Like his path, because it was going in a certain way until he kind of fell off with that illness. And then now he's getting back to where he was probably trending towards before, And it's really interesting, like you're saying, that he, it's not like John Wall or Dominique Wilkins, where it's like athleticism is like their major advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you could tell, oh, he's not as explosive as he used to be. Clay, maybe. I mean, sure, he can get there perhaps, but he was never that explosive to begin with. He can still do those really like kind of unimpressive one-handed dunks, which I love to see. But it's like, oh, he's reaching up there, just getting his wrist over the rim, and it's better than I can do. But I fully expect him to actually be a little bit more consistent than I had thought he would be going to the playoffs. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's just been interesting to see. I think I was telling my kids, like, sometimes there's such a thing as wanting it too badly, right?
Oh,
like, and I think that's kind of been his story this year, like wanting it too badly, wanting it all to come back too badly, and we all want it to come back too badly as well. So, but I think he's finding a rhythm, and so that's something nice to see. And in terms of like something that I liked this year, it's like, well, they barely had any time together, but seeing those 3 guys come back and play at a high level at different points in the season, and we hope that it all comes together in the playoffs. But it's been nice to see that they can still play at a high level. So that's also why I'm excited to have the playoffs start, because we get Steph back and we got our guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, when we did our post All-Star, what we're looking forward to, I said seeing those 3 guys play together. and we got that for 11 minutes. Luckily, I did watch that game. Not only has the season been long and a lot of guys have been out, but like that, this is the real season. I'm excited because when I started this podcast in 2018, I stopped before the playoffs, so I've never done playoff games, and they didn't make the playoffs last year. I did the 2 play-in games, but that wasn't as fun, right? Because those felt like just regular season games tacked on to the end.
Yeah.
And so now
they lost both of them too.
Exactly. So now I'm curious to see like what it's like, how it feels with like these breaks between games and just, playing the same opponent, and not just like on the court, obviously, but like it'll be fun to like talk about that kind of stuff in general. I want to talk about one thing I didn't like about this season, which has nothing to do with the Warriors, really quickly, is, and I don't want to belabor this point because it's something that you and I have talked about before, is that the way that the refs called fouls at the beginning of the season to now, it's, we're like guys like Trae Young and James Harden weren't baiting and getting their fouls, that baiting the refs into foul calls. So it was great. And I looked at their number of free throws per game on average. They were like at least half, and now it's almost back up to where it was before, or if not there. So I find that a little bit frustrating. That's a minor thing in the long run, but it's something that you're like, well, they tried, and I guess they course corrected and went back to how it was before to some degree.
So, I think, it's as a whole, if you could, we mentioned a few things that we liked and we didn't. If you were to kind of like summarize the season as a whole, what would, like, how do you feel about it? Like before the playoff starts, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it, from a Warriors perspective, I feel like it is like unfulfilled. I mean, I talked about this a lot during the year, like wanting to see the talent on this team, the potential of this team reached, right? That's all you ever want from like athletes, because you're like, oh my gosh, like James Wiseman, he's such a unicorn, he can be this. And obviously, selfishly, he's a Warrior, so you want to see him help your team win, but also you just want to see guys like that and how they work with the Hall of Famers like Steph, Klay, Draymond, seeing, like you said, those 3 guys back together. But we haven't seen that, beyond 11 minutes. Playoffs are an opportunity to witness that, right? Like I want to see the 4 championship dudes play in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been 3 years since we've seen that, right? And since then, like Andre Iguodala's been on technically 2 teams before coming back. So it's been a minute, and that's how it feels. And all the other stuff around, like the drama, like Ben Simmons, you know what I mean? Like all this chatter, the Lakers hilarity, I'll say. It's been entertaining, I'll just put it that. So some of these storylines I could do without, but some of them I'm like, I should really just like put my phone down before I go to sleep, but I'm infinitely scrolling with
don't do it. Like, don't do it.
What did Westbrook shoot tonight? Like, that kind of thing. The NBA playoffs mean next level basketball. Get ready for all the action by betting the play-in tournament with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets instantly. You clinch a win no matter what. All DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on NBA hoops with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. Plus, for each day of the play-in, get a risk-free bet up to $10 if your same-game parlay doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Bet $5 on any NBA team to win their game during the play-in tournament and get $150 in free bets instantly. That's promo code TBPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, to get something I didn't like about this season, like not seeing James Wiseman, that sucked. Yeah. I mean, as exciting as Kuminga and Moody to some degree has been, just like, man, oh yeah, like imagine if we had that guy, right? And how entertaining it would have been. I mean, it all contributed to this really like up and down. I mean, you said it at the beginning. It's just like this has been a long season. It's had a lot of twists and turns in terms of like, when is somebody going to come back? When is Klay going to come back? When is James going to come back? And then Draymond is out, and then when is he going to come back? And I'm like, oh, Steph. So I didn't go back and listen to or figure out what our picks were for what the Warriors would be, but I believe we said like what's the best case scenario, realistic best case scenario, and I said like, and I think we said like the 2 or the 3 seed. So it's kind of like where we've ended up is almost like our best realistic scenario. I think we all recognize that Phoenix was really damn good, and they were coming off the finals, so that didn't seem to be in the cards for us. But a 3 seed, if you were gonna just look at it, look at the standings and look at the numbers, you'd be like, oh wow, amazing, So I feel good about that, and to show that when they've been kind of like firing on all cylinders, they can beat anybody. And going into this playoffs, like nobody should want to face this team. I've been feeling really good about that. If all the things can come together, and as we even feel in our own lives, but it's hard to get those cylinders going, right? So it may not happen. I'm being realistic about that as well.
One of the things that I said on my list of 10 reasons why the season will be epic was that there's a lot of parity in the league. Whereas like when the Warriors were dominant, they were clearly like the best team. Maybe like there was another team that was close, or like, hanging around for a year, maybe like the Spurs or the Grizzlies or whatever. But this year I said there's going to be a lot of parity. It's going to be really exciting. And we're seeing that play out right now, right? Like we're looking at who the Warriors might play, and it's been this dance of like, oh, Denver, are they going to get Michael Porter Jr. back? Are they going to get Jamal Murray back? It doesn't look like it at this point anymore, but that was like a thing because that's how much parity there was. Like the 6 seed could, easily have been like a 1 or 2 if healthy. And, like seeing everything line up is not, I mean, like you said, it hasn't really happened for the Warriors this year. And seeing the pieces, like the pieces when Kuminga gets a lot of minutes, or seeing the pieces when Klay and Draymond are back, or when Steph and Draymond are playing together, it's like, can we put all these pieces together somehow? And, it'll happen a little bit in the playoffs, but we'll see, because I'm curious, and I've talked about this, how healthy can the guys stay? Because they've all 4 of the championship dudes have had long injuries for the year. I mean, Klay's, different beast because he's been he was gone entering the season, but then like Steph went out, and then, Draymond went out before that, and Andre's been out for months, it feels like, so any one of those dudes, knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but like any one of those dudes could have a little hitch in his get up. And, that's why, like, I think, having like someone like Kuminga is so helpful. And, people were complaining on Twitter, which is what Twitter's for, I guess, about D. Lee starting versus the Spurs. And I'm like, this is a total Steve Kerr thing. This is smart on his part, actually. It's a game that he doesn't care about that much, and you might need him. Like this is a game, might as well start him. You don't have to play him like in crunch time. But like this is where you do that. And so like I was like, that's okay with me.
I messaged you during the Spurs game. I said, D. Lee will hit an important shot in the playoffs at some point.
Yeah, he will.
It's so out of the Kerr playbook too. Is he? Which I like. Whenever there's like a regular starters out, he'll reach down deep into the bench and put somebody in, right? Because he doesn't want to mess up his rotation, but it's also like trying to keep guys ready and give them a moment to shine, or at least the opportunity, which I think that's pretty cool. So
yeah, I was totally for that. And so I was like, oh, come on, all these people complaining about Kerr, and he's not a perfect dude, but like this is something that he always does. And
it's like, have you not watched like, the last like 7 years or whatever?
It's kind of funny.
All right, I have a few things that I want to ask you. Not quite lists, but a few things, all in the spirit of reviewing the season before we get into class. I mean, we're like chomping at the bit to talk about playoffs, but I think we're going to do that later this week, right?
Yes,
so
yes. After the play-in round,
yeah. So
is finished.
once we know who's facing who, right?
Yeah.
So come back, Oakland Warriors fans, and check out the playoff preview. Anyway, I shouldn't be promoting. I'll leave that to you. But so I want to get some of your awards picks. I'll ask you two of these awards. MVP. Who's your MVP pick?
I'll give it to Joel Embiid. I think it's pretty clear that, I mean, there's a lot of parity with good teams and there's a lot of parity with good players because nobody stood out on the dominant runaway team that was, far and away better than anyone else. And I think Embiid leading the league in scoring and just bringing the Sixers through this season, through all the Ben Simmons nonsense. I think that is pretty impressive. And I'll definitely, there's other people that are deserving, but at this point, if he gets it, I have no problem with that at all. And it's also like, voters like to find a new face every now and then, right? So,
I mean,
there's a new one. I mean,
that's why Karl Malone won, right? When they were like, we gave it to Jordan too many times. Like, we should get Karl Malone. I think Embiid will win it because for that reason, voters like a new face. They like a new story. They like the quote unquote narrative of the MVP. Like it's an ascendance award. It's like you have ascended to this level of player. But then once you get that award, it's kind of like you can't really get it again. Or you have to do so much more to get it again. So I think he will get it. But for me, what Jokic has done has been incredible. And what Giannis is just amazing. Like he's better than he was the last 2 seasons, but I don't think he'll win a third one in a row. So I can't see that happening. So I think it'll be Embiid. All right, let me ask you this other one, because there's been some kind of late season Warriors push for it, is most improved player. I don't know who else is in the running, but should Jordan Poole win most improved player? Like I actually don't know who else would be in the running. But
Jordan Poole, I don't know. I don't know if he deserves it. If he played like this, like the way he's been playing the last, month and a half, pretty much. If he played like this the whole season, or at least half the season, then maybe. But he had a couple of not so great months.
Yeah.
Like people say Darius Garland. Some people say John Morant because he's elevated his game and that team. So honestly, like either of those guys might get it above him and they would deserve it, right? Plain and simple. If Poole, when he went to the bench, didn't kind of disappear, for 2 out of 3 games for like a month or two, it felt like, maybe not that long, but it just seemed that way. He'd be more in the conversation. He was definitely in the conversation to start the season. He was like, everybody was like saying he's, one of the top candidates for it. But after Klay got back, he went a little bit of a tailspin. So that consistency might not be there. And plus, like Darius Garland, he made the All-Star team.
I agree. It's a late push, and it feels a little bit forced. And he had those. He had that really those spells where it's like he couldn't get it going unless he was starting. And it's fine that he struggled. It's understandable. And some of these other players just kind of carried it through the entire season.
All right, that is part 1 of our season review with me and Aram in Toronto. Be sure to check out part 2 coming up tomorrow. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Patrick Epino, Epino, or at Oakland Warriors. You can hit up Aram at Aram Collier, ARAMCOLLIER. Check us out at oaklandwarriors.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel. The link will be in the show notes below. Be sure to tell your fellow Warrior fan friends to tune in and listen. The Oakland Warriors podcast is produced by National Film Society and is a part of the Basketball Podcast Network. And if you're so inclined, please do leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts. And also leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. That would be very much appreciated. Thanks for listening. That's it.
Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time, and go Dubs.